So I've been playing a bit more Elden Ring. Not as much as I'd like, I'm still kind of in the first zone. Sort of. I'm trying not to spoil much. I have more thoughts on the game, and more things I've noticed. There are a few mechanical quirks. I don't know if they're necessarily bad, but they take some getting used to. The biggest one is the roll. I've seen discussions about if the roll is delayed, or if there's input lag or something like that, and I wrote it off at first because when there aren't any frame drops, the game feels really smooth. Over time, I've noticed myself getting hit where I was sure I hit the roll button in time. I've found this side-by-side comparison by Mike Martino showing the time it takes for the roll to initiate after hitting the button in Dark Souls 3 compared to Elden Ring. I don't know if it's 100% conclusive, but it does seem that the time between pressing the button and the character rolling is longer in Elden Ring. I've been trying to consciously roll a bit sooner than I think I need to, and that's been helping some, but I'd definitely prefer if things were more instantaneous. It's a very minor difference though, so I don't mind too much. I do wish the roll had more iframes though. It's a hard balance to strike, and I think Dark Souls 3 went too far in the other direction, where rolling was incredibly safe, and it made the game too easy, in my opinion. This one for sure feels like too little. As you can see here, it's fully possible to successfully dodge roll attacks, yet still get hit because the iframe wears off well before the animation finishes. It gives you a sizable period of vulnerability where you're just not able to act. You can certainly adapt to it, but when you combine problematic attacks, like the certain boss attack I talked about in the previous video, with this lack of iframes, that's where the game might run into problems. So far, it's just been that one boss that's given me issues. What I do mind though, and it's something that I think has been present in some form across all of the games, is the backstab bug. I don't know if there's something about the more open nature of the game or increased complexity and speed of the mobs or what, but I've had this bug happen fairly frequently. You get locked into the backstab animation while the mob continues doing its thing, and if you hit the mob, it does minimal damage, and if you miss, obviously, it does nothing. What's obnoxious is you don't gain the usual backstab invulnerability frames if it bugs out, but you can't exit the animation until it finishes playing. It hasn't resulted in me dying so far, but I've lost health and SS to it several times. Another mechanical problem I have. I don't know if it's a bug or intended, but it seems the amount of iframes you get after being knocked on the ground is minuscule. In other FromSoft games, I remember getting knocked and just chilling until I could get up since things can't really hit you when you're on the ground. That's not the case in this game. I'll often spam the roll button when I get knocked down, desperately hoping the roll iframes come up in time before an attack hits me while I'm locked into the get up animation. I'm not a fan of whatever's going on there. Those are my main mechanical gripes with the game so far. Previously I noted how it felt clunky to swap between one-handing and two-handing weapons, since you need to hold down one button while hitting a different button, but I've mostly gotten used to it, and it really doesn't bother me anymore. I've enjoyed most of the trash mobs in this area, but the flying ones are an exception. They might only be a problem if you're trying to be pure melee, and maybe the designers don't plan the game around that, and they expect you to use the tools you have to get through these things. So I might be playing the game wrong in that regard, but I dislike them. They remind me of dogs in the older games. You can most definitely handle them, they're just not fun to fight. They frequently fly out of range and whip your camera around if you lock on, and it's hard to judge distances and timings when you're going for jumping attacks against them. Which reminds me, the dogs in this game are also kind of obnoxious. I suppose that's to be expected at this point. I don't hate either of them, but I don't get much satisfaction out of fighting them. Before I talk about Godrick, there's a different boss I want to mention. I'll try not to spoil too much, but if you only encountered one boss in this castle area, you might want to go back and poke around a bit more. There's some visuals you come across that are incredible. The whole castle area looks great, actually. But anyway, this other boss is not good. Some combination of the boss model and the area you fight him in makes it impossible to see anything. Lock on, free cam, it doesn't matter. The whole thing's a shit show. I love learning mechanics and figuring out boss moves, but I didn't bother at all with this boss. It might be possible to kill him without getting hit, but I know it'd be such an unfun experience that I just blitzed through the fight and never looked back. It's very reminiscent of some of the Bloodborne bosses, where you just can't see anything, and the most effective tactic becomes flailing wildly with your fingers crossed. I hope there aren't many more of these in the game. As a complete 180, this latest boss is a lot of fun. I love the music here, and speaking of Bloodborne, the influence is unmissable. Lots of string instruments, the chanting is really cool, it's very sonorous. If you're familiar with Ludwig, both the song and the fight remind me of him a lot. The arena is again spectacular. I thought the graves might become annoying since you can get caught on them, but I think it makes you evaluate the space you have to work with in an interesting way. You'll see me reposition a few times in the course of this fight in order to maximize my ability to stay in the clear, flat parts. The Phase 2 transition cutscene is, again, very Ludwig. I predicted what would happen when I first saw his intro, and I was really happy to have guessed correctly because it's a great moment. I was worried for a time about his Phase 2 moveset, as the fire started to look like the dagger problem in my other video, but it turns out you actually can fully avoid every one of his attacks, and I think I do so here. There might be 1 or 2 variations in this run that he didn't do, but I think he did all of them here. It's definitely the vast majority of his attacks, at least. The only problem is the burn the ground close range flame attack thing. The hitbox on it seems very janky. It could also be because of the roll problem I talked about at the start. And you can avoid it, but it requires good positioning and very fast reactions. Other than that, he has a very fun moveset. There's lots of varied attacks with varied timings, and plenty of windows to punish and opportunities to speed the fight up if you know what you're doing, with moves that punish you if you don't know what you're doing and you're just trying to zerg him down. Some of his melee swings could fairly have been given more tracking to make the fight harder, but I think I'm happy with how it is. It allows you to take on the fight with a variety of different weapons and not feel like you're being punished for not using a very fast weapon or a very safe weapon. I like that some of his attacks can be avoided through positioning instead of having to dodge. I think this is my favorite boss so far. I might stop trying to no-hit nearly every boss I come across, since it takes so much time, and I haven't been playing the game as often as I'd like to in the first place, but I think I'll still make videos updating my thoughts as I go.